Welcome back to another episode of Thoughts from the Crawl Space. Today we are going to demystify your roof. And you might be thinking, well, I know what a roof is, but the truth is, you don't think of it very often until there's possibly a problem with it. So your roof is the most expensive thing on your house that you almost never look at. You walk under it every single day and you never give it a thought until there's a stain on the ceiling. Today we are going to look up. So, what is actually up there? Well, a roof is a system. It's not just shingles. It's decking, it's underlayment, it's roof covering, it's flashing, it's ventilation, all working together. Common coverings in our area are asphalt shingles, which are by far the most common in our area. Metal is probably second, and then you have some of the higher end roofs like wood shake or tile. Some low slope roofs have, rubber membrane or things like that. A built up roof which is pretty uncommon on residential, but more common on commercial. So there's two kinds of asphalt shingles. We have the older 3-tab, or they're more flat and uniform. Every shingle looks the same and they go up pretty easily and they're easy to see if there's a problem. And then you have architectural, or what we call them is dimensional. And those are thicker and layered. And as you might expect from the word architectural or dimensional, the purpose of them is to simply create a different look on the roof, a little architectural, a little nicer look of the shingles that are up there. One thing they're pretty good at doing is hiding some irregularities in the roof decking over houses, or if you've had an addition put on, or and you don't match up exactly right with the framing, you can get some dips and some humps in your roof. And these do a better job of revealing that kind of thing than the flatter shingles, the 3-in-1s that we call them. So there's more than one reason to use them. They last a little longer. We'll get into that in a little bit, but generally the architectural is designed to have a more appealing look, a little more natural look than the 3-in-1s. And then flashing is the metal that seals the transitions. You could have this around your chimney. You can have it in the valleys, open valleys. You'll be able to actually see it, but most of the time it's under the valleys, and so you won't see it, but it's there. If they used metal, they don't always use metal. Sometimes there's other products they use that can work just as well. But wherever there's a change in direction, or where there's a change in, like, where a roof meets a wall, that kind of thing, and around every pipe. The pipe flashings, those are generally not metal. Those are almost always, they may have a metal base, but the collar around it is a rubberized type of product. And those don't typically last as long as the roof itself. So we have to look at those very carefully. Another kind that you will see is lead. They made one-piece lead flashings back in the day, and we still see some of them. And it just comes up and wraps right around the top of the pipe. And as long as there's no holes or gaps in it, those things last and last and last. So those are what's up there. The decking is a thing that you will only see when you're in the attic. At least you should only see it when you're in the attic. If you're seeing the decking from the roof, then we have a bigger problem. So let's talk about how long a roof should last. When we do an inspection, one of the biggest questions we get is, how much longer do you think I have on my roof? And we understand that question. We understand it's a big expense. We understand it's a concern. You want to know what's coming up. And we frequently get asked that question. Now, it's one thing to guess, it's another thing to be exact. And anybody that's seen a bunch of roofs can roughly see, you maybe in the last quarter of its life, you may be in the, it's mid-span or it's newer, that kind of thing. It's going to be about impossible to determine exactly how long you have left on your roof, just simply because how long do you want to fight it? Until it leaks, until you're starting having some shingles tear off, or until they're just almost ready to fall off the roof on their own. Most people don't go that far just because you're going to have a lot of leaks most likely before that occurs. But in general, the 3-in-1s or the 3-tab asphalt shingles last roughly 15 to 20 years. That's give or take a pretty standard estimate for 3-in-1s. Architectural shingles, on the other hand, last roughly 25 to 30 years. Um, I will say that it's rare to get up around 25 to 30. I would say the 20 to 25 is a little more realistic. Back in the 90s, the US invaded Iraq. And during that time, oil shot sky high, and shingle manufacturers started using less oil in their production of the shingles. And what it did is it turned out a lower quality shingle. And so there were 30-year shingles that we would see needing replaced around 20 years. They just didn't last as long. They tried to use organic products in it, just didn't work as well. And so when we say 25 to 30 years, you're fortunate if you get that far. Now, there's some things, and of course, metal can last longer than that, but there's some things that can go on that will change that lifespan. One of them is the orientation to the sun. Another one of them is the presence of large trees that can help or hurt. If you have large trees in the pathway, maybe of the west or south facing sun, and it can shield your roof, that's going to help extend the life of it because you don't get the UV rays breaking down the shingles day after day after day as harshly as it would if you didn't have that shade. On the other hand, if you have trees that are overhanging the roof and dropping acids and seeds and whatever else onto it, that can accelerate the destruction of your roof just because it can't dry out. It's going to have acids on it. It's going to deteriorate the asphalt on it and so forth. So other things that can shorten the life of your roof are poor attic ventilation and just sloppy installation. If they're uneven, if the nails aren't installed correctly, believe it or not, on each shingle, there is a nailing strip. And if a roofer puts your shingles on and doesn't put the nails in the nailing strip, one, they're not very good at what they do. And number two, it's much more likely your shingles are going to tear off in a windstorm than if you don't. The nailing strip usually is a double thickness area of the shingle, so it's tougher. And generally, it makes shingles, especially like architectural shingles, and this can vary based on the quality that you buy, but it can make them good for winds up to 100 miles an hour or maybe even more. So you definitely want to have a good installation. A roof bakes from below when the attic is not ventilated. Ventilation occurs in many ways. You can have soffit vents, that's down at the eaves. Modern standards call for really a continuously vented soffit. Older houses had it every maybe 6 feet or so forth. Even older houses, maybe in the 50s, had a lot of wooden soffits and maybe either didn't have ventilation or just had a vent on each side of the house. And so not as productive ventilation wise. But to go along with those vents, you need to have one at the top of the roof, and that would be your ridge vent up the top. Ridge vents are more of a modern invention, I guess, if you want to call it that. Before that, you would see maybe box vents that you would see every 2 to 4 feet across near the peak of your roof. Typically, they put them on the back of the roof so they're not seen from the road. And those provide ventilation as well. Typically, ventilation is the requirements are 1 square foot for every 150 square feet of attic space if you don't have a vapor barrier, and 1 in 300 square feet if you have a vapor barrier. Now, this has to be balanced between the top and the bottom. And without getting too deep into ventilation, we're not going to go measure your vents and say, oh, you have only enough ventilation here for this bigger roof and your roof is bigger. You know, there's caveats to that. What's the prevailing wind? How steep is the pitch of the roof? How is it insulated? How much heat loss do you get? And on and on. So we'll talk about in a little bit what we're actually checking for up there. But roofs can fail early because of a couple of reasons. One, just a manufacturing defect. You'll go to I went to a house one time that had what they considered 50-year shingles, or a roofing manufacturer might even call them lifetime shingles. I suppose the fact that you wouldn't probably buy them till you're in your 20s or 30s and they last 50 years, it's reasonable to think they could be considered lifetime shingles. These were 9 years old and they were curling and they were failing. That's a manufacturing defect. Another thing that can affect that is, like we just mentioned, ventilation. And bakes them from the inside out. It's kind of imperceptible because from the outside you don't notice it until all of a sudden you do. So, what do we check? What does an inspector check on a home inspection? Well, from the outside, we look from the ground, either from a ladder at the eaves, with a drone, or by walking it when it's safe. By far, the most important thing to do, in my opinion, is to walk the roof. This is not required by modern inspection standards. It's a sometimes a way to distinguish between an inspector that's really working for you and one that's just doing the bare minimum. And again, this is a individual inspector decision on each roof. Is it safe? Is the pitch appropriate to walk on? If it's too steep, we're not walking on it. Or we can't walk on it without sliding off. How old is the roof? If it's newer, the granules are going to be firm and you'll have a lot of grip. If it's older, they're going to be coming off and you'll be sliding around a lot. If it's wet, you obviously don't want to walk a roof if it's steep and wet. Certain sides, like the north side of the house on a steeper roof, they can get kind of a black or pink fungus or mold on it because they don't dry out real well. Those are just an invitation to fall off the roof. So that's not going to be walked. And then snow. Now, I've done some crazy things that I wouldn't do again as I've gotten older. But if there's snow on the roof, unless it's just in a couple spots and you can get to other areas safely, we typically aren't going to walk the roof when there's snow on it. Just talking about snow makes me cold. So let's move on. So we're going to look at the very least from the eaves, or if it's too high, maybe with a drone, and we're going to look for granule loss. We're going to look for curling of shingles, cupping of the shingles, cracking, blistering, and missing tabs. Missing tabs typically occur mostly on the 3-in-1 shingles where they get brittle and weak and the wind grabs them and just tears off. And that's a sign that your shingles are deteriorating and getting near the end of their service life. So we're also going to be looking at the vent boots. The rubber collars, as I mentioned previously, around the plumbing pipes, those are frequently cracked. We find that typically they last 10 to 12 years, where your shingles are designed and expected to last closer to 20. And so that's a repair item on your roof that typically needs done before the roof is ready to be replaced. Because it just takes one little crack in those vents to allow water in, then it runs down your vent pipe, it gets into your attic. If it's severe enough, it can leak through to the ceiling below. So these cracks are from UV exposure, and they're probably one of the most common things that we see on a roof. So you can see some of the things that we look for up there. A few other things. Flashing. These are the chimneys, the valleys, and the wall intersections. Now, almost the only time we can see these are when they're on a chimney. And that's because if it's next to a wall, you have siding over it and shingles over it. And so you're really not going to see it. Sometimes you can see signs of it. You can see a little edge of it, maybe. And that's comforting to know that you have it. But a chimney is where you're going to see it more than anything. And this is put in a couple of different ways. The ideal way to put chimney flashing is where they actually grind out the mortar joint in the mortar between the bricks on the chimney and tuck the edge of that metal into it, then mortar over it, and then bend it down and under the shingles. This is a very secure way to do it. It takes very minimal maintenance. Another cheaper way to do it is just to put the step flashing up against the side of the chimney and then seal it on top with some kind of caulk or tar. Now, this is effective as long as the tar and caulk are in good shape, but inevitably they dry out, they crack, they loosen, and you have to do more than that. You got to repair it and keep maintaining it. So we're going to look, another thing we look at on the roof is the ridge line. A sag in the ridge line. We're looking from end to end on your roof and just to see what is going on. If there's a sag, that could indicate a structural problem, believe it or not. Not infrequent to see this on a lake house that has a crawl space that has almost never been entered and maybe doesn't have the right setup structure wise. All right. Gutters, fascia, and soffit. These are a big part of your roof. They help get water away from the house. They help to keep critters from getting into your attic. Holes in the fascia or soffit are invitations for bats, birds, raccoons, squirrels, chipmunks, you name it. They're going to find a way in if you have gaps in there. Again, this is all part of a roof inspection. A roof is not just the shingles or just the metal. It's all the components that work together to help your roof keep water and other things out. So we're going to look at the underside of the decking for stains, active leaks, or daylight. If we go into a dark attic and we can see daylight streaming in around your chimney, we know that there's definitely a gap in the flashing somewhere. If we see staining, that means at least at one time there was a roof leak. Now, it might have been different shingles, it might have been a different owner. When you go into a house that's 80 years old, it's probably had 4 roofs on it. How bad did the roofs get before they replaced it? Who knows? And so we're going to call it out, but we're going to look for anything active. One way to see if they're active is to look on the insulation for drip marks or signs that water's been dripping down there or pooling. But in a day like today, dry, hasn't rained in a week or so. If we see stains in even on the insulation, it's really tough to determine if this is an active leak or not. But at least we can point it out and have you follow up with a seller to get more information on it. Old water stains tell a story even when the leak is currently dry. It gives a history and we don't know. Remember, we're there a snapshot in time as a home inspector. So let's talk about the small problems that can cause big leaks. We've talked previously about cracked vent boots, and this is common. One problem that you can have with this is depending on how they ran the plumbing vent, it can run right down the wall and you won't even know it's happening and you're getting moisture in the wall, which leads to mold. That can be a problem. It's almost more fortunate if you see a stain on your ceiling and that you can see that, you can take care of it, right? Missing or lifted shingles after a windstorm. Your roof is constantly battling the elements. And so after a windstorm, after one of those freak 50 or 60-mile-an-hour straight line winds come through like they seem to do every late winter or early spring, go take a look at your roof and see if the shingles are laying down like they should. Another thing is failed flashing. We just talked around the chimneys, how it can get loose, how the caulking on top of it can get cracked and doesn't do any good anymore. Exposed or backed out nails. This is one of the big ones. This happened in my own house. And we found a leak stain on our bathroom ceiling and traced it to where water had been dripping in, went back up on the roof, and all there was one nail that had backed out through the shingle that it was below. So now we have direct access for water to seep in from snow, rain, whatever, into that area. And that's exactly what I had been doing. I'd probably been doing it for several years, actually, with the size of the water that I saw up in the attic, or water stains, I should say, that I saw in the attic. So that is a big problem that is something little and easy to fix. And that's why doing kind of a maintenance inspection on your roof every year is such a good idea so you can catch those things. So exposed or backed out nails. Um, Whenever you have roof repairs done with caulk instead of proper flashing, that's temporary at best. And temporary fixes tend to not hold up very well. Moss and algae. Typically, these will build up on northern facing slopes or maybe where it's a kind of unique area where the side of the house shades it as it ties into the side of the house. You get moss and algae there, then that holds moisture. That can deteriorate your siding if it's wood siding. And so we're looking for things like that. Clogged gutters. Gutters are awesome if they're sloped right and clean, but many times they're not. People forget about them. They get filled with debris. It holds water. Nails pop out. They sag. And so all kinds of things can happen with gutters. You want to make sure your gutters are sloped properly and getting water to the downspout and away from the house. Another thing that can cause a problem is 2 layers of shingles. 2 layers of shingles is the practical maximum. It's also not best building practice because when you roof over another roof, number one, you don't have a super flat surface, especially if they're architectural shingles, to put the new shingles on. Number two, your nails that you use have to be longer so they penetrate through the roof decking far enough. Number three, you probably had some issues with it to begin with, and now you're just covering over that. Number four, it traps more heat and causes premature wearing on the new shingles. It's estimated that if you roof over an existing roof, you would probably reduce the life of your new shingles by 40%. It's a quick fix, it's cheaper, and that's why people do it. They don't want to take off the layer before. Now, if you have 2 layers and you know you're getting near the end, you're going to have to remove both layers. Now, there are some roofers that say you can just add metal over that, and because metal is lightweight and it doesn't kind of count the same as the weight of shingles, and that may be the case. But it's never a bad thing to take the shingles off to put on a new type of roof. So 2 layers, we see it all the time, not ideal. If you have it, don't panic, but just know what's coming down the road. So let's talk about an action list. What can you do as a homeowner to help ensure that your roof is doing as well as it can? Number one, never walk your own roof. If you're a roofer or you're used to being on the roof, you've had some experience with that, this may not apply to you. But in general, we don't recommend walking your roof. The number one way that inspectors fall off of roofs is getting on the roof from the ladder or getting back onto the ladder from the roof. And so that in and of itself is a risk that we don't want you to take if you don't have to. So hire somebody to do it or use binoculars from the ground. Now, if you have a lower slope roof, let's say a 4 in 12 or 5 or 6, even a 6 in 12 pitch, and you use binoculars, you're not going to see some of the little things. You might see lifted shingles and major things like that, but you're probably not going to see it really well. Number two, after any windstorm or hailstorm, do a ground level scan and check the attic for new stains. Again, if you're not comfortable walking in an attic, it's a good idea to hire somebody. We don't want you falling through the ceiling in your house if you don't know where to walk. Number three, keep your gutters clean so water leaves the roof edge. Again, just to repeat what was said a couple of minutes ago, keep them clean. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, there's companies that will do that for you. Number four, trim branches that overhang or rub the roof. This is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, moisture. Number two, it rubs on the shingles. Number three, critters love branches over roofs because they can easily get on the roof and do what they want to do up there without having to do some circus act. They can just crawl up the tree and right on the branch. Carpenter ants are notorious for this. Most carpenter ant nests are based in trees. So now they're crawling straight up the tree, right on the branch, right on your roof, and potentially into a window even in second story. So trim your branches. There's so many good reasons to trim your branches. And, a shade tree is one thing, but you don't want it overhanging your roof. Five, look at your ceilings now and then. A faint stain is an early warning. We talk to our inspectors all the time. You're inspecting, you're intense, you're looking at everything. Don't forget to look up. All right? That's where you're going to have a problem, most likely from a roof if you do. So look up. And six, know the age of your roof and start planning before year 20, not after a leak. When we do commercial inspections, one of the biggest things someone buying a commercial property wants to know is how long do I have estimated on my roof? How much is it going to cost to replace so I can start a sinking fund, right? Let's just pick a grocery store, big property, right? Maybe 35,000 square feet. A roof for something like that could be $200,000. So they have to plan for that every year. They can't just wait till, oh, it's leaking, I better think about a new roof. Same with you as a homeowner. It's not uncommon for new shingle roofs now to be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range just on, an average size house. So you want to plan, you want to prepare, and you want to be ready for it when it comes. So, whether you're buying a home or just want to know how many years you have left on the roof over your head, the roof is something we evaluate from top to bottom, inside and out, on every inspection. So, find us at goldkeyinspect.com, give us a call, and don't be afraid to ask questions about your roof. We'd love to help you, and we look forward to doing so. Have a great day.